Tonight on the Hawks Zone, you guys are tuning into our bi-weekly segment with Mookie Alexander of Field Gulls, our spin-off segment, Pulse of the Hawks. We're going to get on here. Mookie's coming on, and we're going to take your guys' Q&As like we always do, and really going to break down everything with Mookie, especially yesterday's game, some of the moves that have been made, the fact that we're first place in the division and have a 3-game winning streak as well. And also get into how that defense has been flying around, and also maybe some stuff that, hey, this team still needs to clean up. But we're going to get into all of that on the other side. Before we do that, guys, if you've been watching the channel and you've been liking what you've been watching and hearing, go down, hit the subscribe button for us, hit the like button, share the videos. All that really helps out the channel. And if you can't do that, just throw a comment down there. Throw a comment. We love engaging. All that helps us out, helps the channel out. And everybody that's been supporting the channel, we can't say enough. We appreciate it. So on the other side of the Hawks Zone, Mookie Alexander.
Well, I'm the best corner in the game.
For this run. What a run. Get off me.
DK.
Yes, sir.
Hey, it's John Schneider with the Seattle Seahawks.
And Washington's got a lead. Leo Wilson to catch. Geno Smith and Jimbo. The Seahawks are going to hold the NFC Championship.
Every year, you're going to know is it going to be another 9-8?
Players who've got to finish something.
They have to fix the offense.
Part of his success and part of
ambition of being the LOB one a year. That's trading DK Metcalf.
Trade him aggressive.
This is the Hawks Zone Rundown with Ryan and Bryce.
Guys, welcome back to the Hawks Zone. With us again for our bi-weekly segment is Mookie Alexander of Field Goals for Pulse of the Hawks. Mookie, I checked the pulse, man. It's alive and well right now, man. We're on a 3-game winning streak. We can say what we want. We'll talk about the game. A wild one for sure at MetLife. But we came out of there, and it's one of those games where I think the guys are getting on the plane, and there were some big performances, right? No doubt, and we'll talk about that. But I think it's one of those you get on the plane, and you're like, hey, we got out of there with the win. Let's get back to work here. But you got to be happy with, the fact that we're 7-5 now. What a roller coaster of a season so far. But, man, what was your takeaways from the game yesterday?
Yeah, we certainly had to check our personal pulses throughout the game because that was the ultimate roller coaster. And I'll tell you what, this is one where it's a road win, it's a road comeback. You'll take any road comeback. You just wish they didn't have to do that in the first place, but it's still a valuable win given the state of the NFC West right now and the fact that the Rams also won, which I was hoping that wouldn't happen. But this was a game to me defined by the defense positively and the fact that after the first quarter, they were really just rock solid, virtually from second quarter onward. And then negatively, the special teams and a good chunk of the offensive performance. The special teams was easily one of the worst efforts I've ever seen out of a unit from the Seahawks ever. And you talk about just getting on the plane. There are definitely some people who needed to be a flying coach or just not on the charter flight back because that was disgraceful. And obviously, Seattle felt that way because, well, we were talking about before we went on air, Laviska Shenault, not D. Williams, at least not yet. Laviska Shenault is the one who ends up getting cut.
Yeah, that was Mookie. There were definitely some positives. Like you said, we had to check our pulse constantly through that game. Kind of felt like an homage to a Pete Carroll type game where, the defense played well. The defense kept us in it. And eventually the offense made enough plays and special teams stopped making the wrong plays and we were able to pull it out. But Mookie, overall, what is your take on this defense now? We've now seen a 4-game sample size of Mike Macdonald after he kept telling us that, things were going to come together. They made some personnel decisions. They trade away Jerome Baker, brought in Ernest Jones, cut Tyrell Dotson to play Tyrese Knight. Do you think this is now what our defense was, is going to look like going forward, even past this season? And, what is your takeaway of Leonard Williams and some of these guys that have just made such an impact lately?
The defense, I'm just about sold that this is at least an above average defense. And the reason why I think that's a big deal is that even if the Seahawks do not make the playoffs, which we have to acknowledge is still a distinct possibility, if they don't win the division, they're not making it because there are just too many wild card teams that are going to win at least 10. But we've seen in years past with Pete's defenses that they almost all of them after the Legion of Boom era just had a massive fall off towards the back end. And even within the Legion of Boom era, like when Earl Thomas broke his leg in 2016, that defense didn't force another turnover the rest of the season, I believe, or at least didn't have like another interception or something. And they had some ugly games against competent offenses. But post Legion of Boom, there were some poor defensive showings as the season tailed off more often than not. Or if they did play well, it was against like rock bottom offenses like 2020, playing bad Washington team that beat up San Francisco team, whatever. The Jets offense is not good, but they still look so assignment correct. We didn't see many coverage busts. I think the defensive line is playing really well. And to me, the run defense has been the key to the turnaround because they couldn't sustain that level of performance in the passing game if the run defense was going to continue to flail like it did during the middle portion of the season. The first few weeks, the pass defense looked really, really good. The run defense looked a little shaky, but they could get away with it. And then the wheels came off, and then both things were not functioning. But I don't think it's a coincidence that the pass defense now looks better at the same time that the run defense really has picked itself up. Rams have a good offense. The 49ers, when healthy, even when they're not 100%, we've seen the Seahawks struggle with 49ers offenses that don't have Kittle or don't have Debo, and even in the first meeting didn't have McCaffrey. And then Arizona has been playing well, or at least have been, for a good chunk of the season on offense, with Kyler Murray playing at a really high level, and they held them to 6 points. So that they shut down a couple of divisional opponents, generally speaking, and then repeatedly got out of bad spots in the Jets game, mostly caused by the special teams of the offense. That's usually encouraging because the degree of difficulty is going to get a little bit tougher. Of course, Arizona is the rematch, and you're going to expect adjustments there. But Green Bay is playing at an elite level offensively, and they're going to be a serious test, not just with Jordan Love and those receivers, but also their running game, their offensive line, and Josh Jacobs. So that's going to be tough. Minnesota's offense is really, really tough to deal with because it's not just the fact that Sam Darnold's having his little career turnaround. They also have a good running game. They've got a good offensive line, and they've got one of the best receiving duos in the game in Jefferson and Addison, and a top tight end in Hawkinson. So if they can sustain this over the next few weeks and start looking great against even better teams, we can see the vision of Mike McDonald's group and the potential of this defense being a real upper echelon unit next year, because most of the dudes on this roster on the defensive side of the ball are under contract next year. And you brought up the midseason changes, yes, trading Baker, cutting Dotson, et cetera, but also adding Roy Robertson Harris after, I think it was the 49ers game, so before the Falcons game. I think the defensive line is playing better because they got more bodies available. So Mike Morris not playing a lot, Miles Adams waived. So now you're seeing more Robertson Harris, you're seeing more rotation, a little bit less Hankins. I think Byron Murphy's probably not meant to be playing as many snaps as he had the early portion of the season, and he's not been bad or anything. It's just that he's not necessarily making the big impact statistically that you might have expected. But still, how can you not be enthused watching Big Cat and everything he's provided over the last 2 weeks? Like, if you play like that for a few more weeks, we'd be talking about him in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. He's been that good.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about acquisitions and changes in midseason. A guy that was on this roster, but you could almost make the argument with, when Kobe Bryant moved into the safety spot because of Rayshon Jenkins' injury, right? So you talk about that. Are you surprised how quickly this run defense is kind of flipped a switch, or is it really, really it comes down to guys, maybe picking up the scheme, but also the acquisitions? I mean, once Ernest Jones came out here, it seemed like that switch got flipped on pretty quickly, right? And then with maybe some of the other bodies. I mean, to me, he doesn't just bring this the style of play, but there's a little extra swagger with that guy, man. I mean, and it seems to be rubbing off a few guys, like the way we saw Spoon, with the attitude and the swagger, and the way this team's buying in now, and all that. You watching, I think it was a 3rd and 26 yesterday, and they panned over to the defense, and it just looked, they were all sort of dancing and just, bring it like you guys can't do anything on us. I mean, that's a confident defense. Not only are you buying in now, but it just has a different feel. I mean, is that your takeaway? And then the fact that the big thing is with these acquisitions, because I feel like if you still had Dots and Baker, you might have seen some improvement with the D, but I think those are that's no question the key here to all of this.
Yeah, the Ernest Jones midseason trade, it's even better than the Dunlap midseason trade a few years ago, because Seattle had zero pass rush going in. I mean, they tried to do as much as they could with Mayo and Shaquem Griffin and whoever else, but it just wasn't working. This is somebody who's going to be around for, you hope, several years, as opposed to Dunlap, who was in the twilight of his career. And I think that McDonald kind of made it clear, without calling them out directly, that a lot of the run defense problems were at second level, and a bit of the safeties, but especially the second level. And you could see it. Guys not filling their gaps. They're rotating over, and they're over pursuing, missing tackles. Their fits are not good. And certainly Baker, I think, was a lot more culpable than Dotson, because Dotson did have some good short yardage run stops, but nevertheless, those two were clear liabilities. And with Jones, they're making sure that the safeties don't have to get involved too much in stopping the run. You don't want to see your secondary making tackles 10, 15 yards down the field. You want to see them playing close to the line of scrimmage like Witherspoon has over the last few weeks, and being in dogged pursuit. So, yes, Ernest Jones has been magnificent. I could run out of superlatives for the guy. I was on Brendan Schultz's post-game podcast yesterday. I said, to me, the four players on this defense who are playing at the absolute highest level, and they're the big reason that the Seahawks have turned this season around defensively: Ernest Jones, Devin Witherspoon, Leonard Williams, and Julian Love.
Yes,
to me, it's those four that have done a tremendous job consistently. I think they are all playing at an extremely high level. And look, I'm not expecting Legion of Boom 2.0 or anything like that. So they're not close to that. But just to have a defense that is good enough to give a struggling offense a fighting chance every week, I will take that. I will absolutely take that. I didn't think we would see that. I certainly didn't want to think that of the offense, but the fact that the defense is playing like this gives us a lot more optimism, both short-term and long-term, as opposed to when the team was, say, 4-4 after the Bills game, and it looked like, wow, this offense is struggling and the defense isn't any good. Are we looking at like a much longer rebuild than realized? Instead, it's, hey, maybe they are at least reasonably close to be more than just a fringe playoff team, just in the way that the defense is performing.
So, Mookie, it's kind of interesting you mentioned those four guys in particular, because last night on our post-game show, me and Ryan were talking about like kind of potential blue chip guys. And we originally looked at the Seahawks roster and we thought, okay, maybe Devin Witherspoon, JSN, like true blue chip players. We were waiting to see if JSN was going to be a blue chip, because where he was drafted, we assumed so, but we weren't sure if we were going to get it. Now I really look at this, defense, and I go, Leonard Williams is a blue chip player. Ernest Jones is a blue chip player, like a guy you're going to build around for years to come, and he's going to be a staple. Julian Love has turned into an all-pro level safety almost, playing in the back end for Mike McDonald in a lot of ways. And Devin Witherspoon's been reignited. Like, you have so many pieces now that are playing at such a high level. It's kind of funny because when I think about the beginning of this year, we all thought, okay, the offense is going to look so much better, and we just need a average defense to potentially be a playoff team and be a threat, because that was the big issue. We couldn't do anything on defense. And you look now at, past this midway point, past week 12, week 13 of the NFL season, we're going, okay, we've got potentially now in the range of what they've done in the last, since basically week 8-ish, week 9, has been a top 10 defense. We just need an average offense, which is not something I never thought I'd be saying this season, is we need an average offense to complement our stellar defense. And I know we'll probably get to it, and it's going to be a big discussion point for this week, and I think for the rest of the season, is this offense. But before we get there, what were your takeaways from that special teams unit and Jay Harbaugh? And that entire debacle that was our kickoff return team basically on Sunday.
That was dismal. I mean, that's a fireable offense. It was that bad. Now, I think Harbaugh is generally safe, but that performance was so bad, it knocked Seattle special teams DVOA down like 13 or 14 spots. It was absolutely woeful. And it wasn't just the fact that D. Williams, again, fumbling a kick return or a punt return. That's 3 for him. And he's lost all of them too. So I think he's got to be gone at some point. Did you catch that part of the broadcast where it looked like Smith and Jigba was telling
Yes.
that he can, because
put me in the game, I will not drop the ball.
I mean, Bryce, you and I were there at the practice at Lumen Field, and JSN was one of the punt return options, but it was just fair catching it. The others were actually just trying to. I will take that at this point, because
isn't that the point? I mean, would you not want DJ Dallas in there right now? The point is to secure the ball and get back and get the offense on the field.
Yeah, and even DB had a couple of muff punts last year, but generally that wasn't a thing he did all the time.
Right.
But D is ruinously bad. Like, I could take some of the fumbling if it meant that he would occasionally spring some 90, 95-yard kick return or a huge punt return. But since he's not doing that, I don't see why he should be on this roster. And keep in mind, Seattle's got to activate Chenna and probably Stone Forsythe as soon as this week even. So they're going to be spots available, and they don't really have anybody who should go on IR. So I would think that D's spot is not guaranteed. Chenault, I was sort of surprised because he has provided good moments in the kick return game, and he's also made some nice tackles as a gunner. But I think part of the writing on the wall for him was the fact that he was clearly losing snaps within the offense, because he was supposed to be kind of this gadget guy. He really can't run routes. And the fact that almost all of his targets were behind the line of scrimmage tells you what they thought of him from preseason into the regular season. But I don't think it was a coincidence that they signed Cody White to the active roster. It was more than just, hey, Metcalf was out and Cody White had to be signed. It's that they couldn't play Chenault at all. So Cody White essentially overtook him in the lineup. Derek Young even got some snaps over him, and Derek was inactive last week. But even Derek occasionally can provide a couple of offensive snaps, and he's also decent on special teams. So Chenault being gone, I mean, that certainly sends a message that these screw ups are too much, because he's also fumbled 3 times, and just a goofy ass fumble too, dropping the ball, picking it up, falling down without anybody touching you, and falling and fumbling it again. That was unbelievable. The kick coverage was awful, and that had been at least good for them for much of the season, but they weren't even close. That Nwangwu guy, he'd been chilling on the practice squad. And then he signed to the active roster. He's got 4 kick return touchdowns already. Can we coach Godwin Igwebuike out of retirement or something? Because when he signed and played a couple of weeks in the 2022 season, it felt like we were witnessing Leon Washington reincarnated, and it was just him taking it out to the 31. But the kick returns were bad, and I feel like they compounded the problem by just repeatedly inviting returns. Those kicks were constantly coming up short of the end zone. So, yeah, that was pathetic. The only good thing of the special teams unit right now, because, of course, they had another extra point blocked, and I think it was Tomlinson who got run over, surprise, surprise, is Jason Myers. And I know there's some fans who are a little bit worried about Myers after a couple of misses in preseason, but he's killing it from 50+. He's made 7, I believe, and that is now a new franchise record. He had the previous franchise record as well, but he's making them with confidence, and he's had to make some important ones, including in this game. So without Myers, and actually I should also add Michael Dixon's also been a positive. Without Myers and Dixon, this is a horrendous special teams unit with the way they played for much of the season. And against the Jets, they could get away with it. But against even a league average team, that would have been a blowout loss for sure.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And the thing is, and especially with the new rules, new kickoff rules, it's even more under a microscope if you just can't lose the football, because the amount of times you're going to see like the Dante Hall and that era is over. It's just the NFL doesn't even want this. So anybody taking it out of the end zone, I don't understand it. You get the ball at the 30 if you take a knee. And I know what the Jets were doing. They were like, take it out, because every time you do it, you fumble. But like you said, even as poor as the Jets are, and it was on display yesterday, especially that one of the last drives where they just kept giving us the ball back because they just kept taking penalties. But if it wasn't for the Leonard Williams pick six, they would have lost. I mean, I was texting Bryce and I literally said this special teams just lost us the game in the second quarter because and if he doesn't miss Garrett Wilson there on that wide open touch, that should have been a wide open touchdown. They're up, and then that was a very next play or the second next play. Big Cat takes it that was a 14-point turnaround. So really, the special team, it should have been 28-7. I think something like that, 28-6, 27. The game would have been essentially really tough to come back, and especially the way our offense is playing. And that was the thing. Here comes our defense again, stepping up, and Big Cat taking, unbelievable. He's been playing just a game wrecker. And again, the defense puts more points on the board, and that's something that you don't realize at the end of the day when you look at the scoreboard and you say, well, 21. The offense probably played okay, but no, that's the defense has been responsible again. So if we get down that big of a margin, I mean, that's why I just thought, hey, the game is finished, and unbelievable. And so credit the Hawks to actually get out of there with the win. Because like you said, I haven't seen a special teams game like that, man. The Chenault second fumble, and when they lost it, I was up, and it was you talk about the pulse. It was more like disbelief. Like, are we watching this? So crazy, man. But I got to give credit to the Hawks that that this is a team now where you can say, with all the crap like that they can still stay level-headed and come back and beat this team. And because the Jets are still an NFL football team, and I agree, if it's the Packers or the Vikings, yeah, you lose. But I'm going to give credit that they stuck with it and to be that bad and come out with a victory. So, and they're 7-5 because of it. But yeah, that's man, I'm just glad we got out of there with all that debacle.
The one thing I've got to say about our special teams unit too, and we talk about these returners and Chenault and D. Williams, and when we were at the game there, Mookie, the preseason scrimmage game, there was one returner that I actually liked outside of who we thought were going to be the guys, and that was Aesop Winston Jr. He held on to the ball, he could return it well. And to be honest, like we talk about, Chenault hasn't really worked out in the offense. Aesop Winston, I think, would have been a better offensive weapon potentially because he can actually run routes and get open as your fourth, fifth receiver, sixth receiver on this roster. And he could still return kicks and return punts. And, Derek Young seems like a wasted roster space as well. Like he's not, useful at all. Like I don't see, he's getting scratched. So he's not the special teams guy that we thought he was going into the season. I miss Larry Izzo. I never thought I'd say that I miss a special teams coordinator, but I actually miss Larry Izzo and his special teams because at least, yes, we didn't break things. We weren't, super explosive, but we never had performances like what we had on Sunday.
Yeah, and it's been something almost every week this season. And how many times has D. Williams had to fair catch a punt where there's a Seahawk player perilously close to it? And of course, on one instance, it should have been a fumble in the first 49ers game, and the Amazon broadcast didn't actually show the smoking gun, so to speak. So the play was never reversed to a fumble. Where is D. Eskridge these days?
Yeah,
no, he's with the Dolphins.
But you think about that. A couple of explosive plays in the preseason. I'm just saying, it's easy to look back now and be like, we could add anybody except D. Williams. I think that's, it's kind of one of those things, right? We were all kind of like, okay, maybe this kid's dynamic and he can play a spot. He can also play a little DB if you need it. He's, and that's why I think he had that roster spot. I don't think anybody thought he'd be this bad at returning kicks. And even the decision making, right? Like some of the decision making he's made to either let a ball go or just any of that stuff. It's all been bad. But yeah, I think at this point most people would take almost anybody. That offense. You talk about JSN. He's like, they're just there's no confidence in these guys. Those we cringe. You imagine you're on the sideline as a player. You're just like, man, come on, just catch the ball so we can get DK, JSN, Tyler, Ken just back on the field, man. That's all we want. So yeah, I think
I can't believe Brendan Meyer's comment right here. That's just
which this
Where's D. Eskridge at these days?
That's what we're talking about. That's what
I
you guys
know,
are
but like
looking at.
the fact, but just
That's
to
what
me,
I mean.
like the fact that we're having this conversation of where is D. Eskridge, like
Because you take almost anybody at this point. I think
you know
that's
who I'd actually take. Honestly, the guy I would actually take is Brian freaking Walters because the dude never dropped a punt
and that's
ever.
the point. That's the number one. I think the house call is to me icing on the cake. If you can break one, great. But what we're not seeing kickoff returns, it's different. It's the way they have it now. You're barely anybody. The fact that they broke one on us and took it to the house, it's not in the game anymore. So if even one fumble, really, it's not good enough.
Yeah, I mean, between Walters and fair catch Freddie Swain,
Man.
they might as well be kings as far as special teams.
Yeah.
This was basically as bad as the 1 week they let Earl Thomas return punts, but like just pretend that happened every week for the entire season.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I brought up Leon Washington in jest, and he wore number 33 when he was here. And I love Leon, and I wish he could have gotten a ring with us. And then unfortunately he got traded the year Seattle won the Super Bowl. And D is wearing his number. This number is cursed, man, because after Leon, it's been Jamal Adams, Hedrick Thompson, and D Williams. They're going to have to forbid anybody from wearing number 33. We're not retiring the jersey. It's just that it's a cursed jersey.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
No, but so Mookie, let's get into the one topic. I know you and me have been kind of messaging back and forth about it. I've been talking to Dan Viens and Chris Clough and Seaside Joe and a whole bunch of people. What do we do with this offense? What do we like? And we can't turn around and keep pointing blame at the offensive line. People want to point at Geno. And I think part of this really the majority of this blame, I think, goes on Ryan Grubb. And some people may not like that take. And, I was listening to Rob Staten and Jeff Simmons today on their show. And, I thought I was crazy when I came out of the game yesterday and I was emotional about it. And I was like, you know what, that's it. I'm done. I'm out on Ryan Grubb. And I sat back and I thought about it last night and I watched a bunch of film. And it almost was the worst thing I could have done because it drove home more my opinion that Ryan Grubb, it should not be the offensive coordinator. And part of my thing with this, Mookie, and I dove into a lot of his old Washington stuff, like his college stuff and why he was so successful in college. And there's a couple things like some core values for him and philosophies will never translate properly to the NFL. One thing Mike McDonald talked about was his motion, how he moves formation and does all that stuff. In college football, it's super effective because of where your hashes are and how far guys can really extend themselves out. The NFL, you don't get that same luxury with the hashes being as tight as they are. You're not seeing the real strength flip of your motion and your, overset to one side, come back the other way. You're just not seeing the effect of it. The other big thing is the gap of talent. If you play a school that does not recruit as well as you do, you will see that talent discrepancy get big. And he feasted on bad teams with bad, recruiting, bad players out on the field. The gap of talent was huge. And then the last thing for me too is the amount of guys you can carry on your roster. You look at a lot of those Washington games, the amount of rotation of receivers where, okay, Odunze's dead tired. We're going to put Jalen Polk here. We're going to put McMillan here. We're going to put Taj Davis here. We're going to rotate a bunch of these guys around. You had the luxury because you could carry like 10 receivers or 11 receivers on your game day roster because you have these massive rosters. Those things aren't afforded to you in the NFL. And with Ryan Grubb, it seems like he's lost. He doesn't know. Ryan mentioned it on our post-game show. He's like throwing darts, hoping something sticks in the playbook and it works. Like, it's baffling. Like, there's no quick game anymore in this offense. Like, nothing about getting the ball out of Geno's hands quick. Everything since Abe Lucas has come back is let's see if Geno can hold on to this ball for 7 seconds without getting touched. And, as much as people want to blame Geno, like, Geno didn't play well yesterday. He played okay. He didn't play great. He didn't turn the ball over, but I don't know, Mookie. Like, I am so out on Ryan Grubb. Like, I don't know if there's a way he can save his job.
he can, if Seattle somehow wins the Super Bowl, maybe he gets to stay. But let's be real, Seattle's probably not winning the Super Bowl. And if they do, we're going to look back on this episode as one of the great moments in Freezing Cold Takes history. I will gladly take the L for that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll take it too.
That sequence of plays at the goal line, there was one play where I could say, actually, that's a good play, and Geno missed it, which was the play action to Fan. And maybe Geno was a little bit wary of getting picked on his inside, that he threw it too far to Fan's outside. That's a miss, and he's got to hit that throw. The first play, the fade to Metcalf with Sauce.
It's never worked. Ever.
First of all, how many times have they even run that play in the regular season? How many times have they run that play with Waldron or Schottenheimer when Wilson was a quarterback? That's their best corner. I know that Seahawks fans have got this thing with Sauce because of the Willen debate, but is Grubb like watching Seahawks Twitter or something? I mean, you got to be kidding me. That is not a play that Metcalf has ever excelled at. It was a barely catchable throw by Geno to begin with. That's a waste of a down. Yeah. The slant to Geno, so a slant to DK on the 3rd and goal. I think it was like the 2nd, 3rd and goal after the
penalty. Yeah.
You got to be kidding me, man. Like, again, their best corner. I know DK is the best receiver, maybe, because JSN has been playing out of his mind lately. A one-read throw that is predicated on Metcalf winning his route right away. Now you want to call slants? They've called like 5 all season. You got to. That's inexcusable. And then the 4th and goal. Yeah, Geno can't take that stack, but I think there was a DOA play. I mean, Oluwatimi gets Oluwatimi's brutal yesterday, and unfortunately, he did not play well, especially as a run blocker. But half field, sprint out left. There are only 3 realistic targets,
and they were all
covered. Like if I guess the closest the option was probably Smith and Jigba, and that maybe Noah Fant was supposed to do some kind of natural pick, but he wasn't close. And even if Smith and Jigba is targeted, there's a really good chance he gets tackled short of the end zone. So whether, regardless of the lost field position for the Geno sack, just abysmal play calling. The fact that they can't run the ball inside the 5 is both a Grubb and Huff problem, but they got too many tells when they're running the ball. When they are under center, we know they're running the ball like it feels like a 70-some-odd% clip. They're just too obvious. When Barner is in motion like that, and they bring in Sundell, we know exactly what's going to happen, and so does the other team. Once again, they try and stuff Charbonnet in there at the 1-yard line, and he can hardly get it. I was just pulling up the goal to go stats, and I'm gonna have to find it on my Twitter because I'm too lazy to pull up NFL Pro. 32nd in EPA per pass in goal to go, and of course, a couple of those plays are probably the Geno pick 6 against the Rams, and then the other pick in the Rams game 2, and some other garbage plays that have been run. 27th in EPA per run, and that's keeping in mind somehow, some way, Seattle has scored more rush. They scored a lot of rushing touchdowns for a team that's bad at running the ball. They're 32nd in EPA per play total in goal to go situations, and they weren't great the last 2 years with Waldron, but they were at least mediocre or somewhere close to average. I don't know how you can look at that as anything other than a Ryan Grubb problem. And the sticking point for me is this is not the first bad offensive line the Seahawks have ever had.
No,
it's not even the 8th bad offensive line we've seen in the last 10 years. Only Grubb's offense looks this poor over the last however many years. And I mean, it was just so frustrating. I think there's still a possibility that Grubb could end up being a good NFL offensive coordinator down the line, but he's not ready. He just isn't. And I think he's going to get canned depending on how this season goes. We've talked about it before in private and in public. I don't think that he was ever the first choice. I think they were really in on Kafka. They were in on him during the Waldron hire, and then they were trying to get in. And then the Giants did some weird thing where they gave him some bullshit
play calling duties.
The play calling duties, and gave him a raise, all that. Well, guess what? That staff looks checked out. Kafka's probably going to be a free agent. But at the same time, it's also possible that Kafka ends up being, an NFL head coach soon, for all we know. There are going to be some vacancies. But whatever the case, they're probably going to be looking at a new offensive coordinator and maybe a new offensive line coach, because the continued struggles in the run game probably also have to fall on Huff too. It might be one and the same. Those two have never coached in the NFL until now, and those two have also enjoyed a substantial talent advantage whether it's Fresno State in Grubb's case or UW when they were both here. And you think about the national championship game, UW and Michigan, and what happened when the talent gap suddenly decreased. And Michigan clearly had guys that just kicked the shit out of UW's players. And suddenly Grubb's offense was again, just totally spent. And it feels like we're just seeing that almost every week with a very talented offense to me. Whatever you think of Geno, he's an above average quarterback to me. Got above average receivers, certainly at the top two. You've got a decent set of tight ends, and you've got at least a really talented running back and a existing backup running back who's just pretty much, a very inefficient runner at that. But I think a better offensive coordinator and a better offensive line, those guys could really be unlocked. So to me, the fact that JSN is having this big breakthrough moment is not enough for Grubb to save his job. There are just too many instances of this offense being disjointed that really they can't afford that against better teams. And shoot, they can barely afford it against lesser teams.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't even need to look at the stat sheet or the, any type of stats. I think it was on display with 10 tries at the 1 yard line, and you didn't have a plan. Like you just mentioned, we all three of us agree. I didn't think most Seahawks fan, it was like, well, you just want to waste a play, the first one, fade to DK. That never works. So, and then it's like, let's do something. What else can I do? Like Bryce mentioned, I brought this up when it was like, it just was a mishmash of stuff. It was like, now let's try this. Oh, we got a new set. Okay, slant to DK. See if that works. It was like, where are your go-to plays? And then to cap it all off, I'm all for going for it on the 1 yard line and 4th down, because worst case scenario, you're supposed to have the other team in their own end zone and the defense can pin their ears back and go after Aaron Rodgers. But they take a 20-yard sack. They're in shotgun. It was baffling, and it was like, it kind of gave you an idea. Like, I don't know if he really knows what to do at this point. And like you said, I think we came into this year thinking, the other thing is, it's pretty bad when we kind of start talking about Shane Waldron again. Shane wasn't good, but he was doing this, or we were ranked this high in the NFL in certain categories. When you start kind of bringing in, and everybody was happy to see Shane walk out the door, and the Bears got rid of him early, right? So that's a pretty clear indication to us, and now Bryce has been out on him for a little bit now, that this guy's just not ready, and that's fine. But we also talk about you had some expectations for this offense, like you just ran through the guys on this offense. We don't have scrubs on this team. You talk about JSN, yeah, this guy should be unlocked. He's a good receiver. So with all that combined, it's, and you know what, when you look at it, when you break it down, there's a lot of first-year coaches on the staff. Mm-hmm. You're not going to hit on all of them, and like you said, even if it was his first choice, second choice, to expect every coach to hit in a brand new regime, maybe it's naive, like you saw what he did and you're excited about the hire. Hey, Mike's coming in here. He's grabbing a guy. He's high on him. He's probably coming from ranks. Hey, football's football. But you know what? Different levels, different competition. And, like you said, I just think I said yesterday to Bryce, hey, if they make the playoffs, maybe a run, they saves it. But, now after the reaction show and after thinking about it and when Bryce brought up some points, I'm in the same boat. Like, yeah, maybe if they make the Super Bowl and lose, maybe he still keeps a job. But, because think about it, if they make the playoffs and the offense is the same, even in the playoffs, and they're one and done because the offense is so lethargic, he's not showing anything that we made the playoffs. It has, Ryan Grubb should be back. It's showing that, to get further where we want to be, this offense has got to be a little better. So I'm in the same boat with you guys here.
So there's a couple things I got to touch on here. One, they're a tandem buck, Scott Huff and Ryan Grubb. They go together. And Scott Huff, everyone talked about how great it was at, Washington, what he built at the O-line position, and all that kind of stuff. Well, can we really name star Washington offensive linemen that have converted well to the NFL? Really? There's not a lot of them, if any, in his tenure there. Nick Harris has kind of been, average at best. Troy Fatanu can't really play because of his knee. He's struggling. there isn't a lot of guys that you write home about that go like, yeah, that was a great Washington pick. Like we took him and he's turned into a star for us. And, you look at our offensive line as a whole. We always want to talk about the interior of it. Charles Cross, outside of the first 2 games of the season, has been average. He is tied currently for 3rd in hurries right now in the NFL. He's given up 26 hurries. Since Abe Lucas, he had 1 sack prior to Abe Lucas that was accounted to him that he had given up. Since Abe Lucas has come back, he has 4. Charles Cross is not playing great football. He's an average tackle right now in the NFL. And in some respects, considering what everyone was talking about earlier, we got to make sure we pay him. We got to lock him in. He's still got 2 years left on his deal. He's got year 4 and his option. I'm in no rush to pay Charles Cross until I see some better play, until he proves that he's better than that. Because right now, the guys that he is tied with, number 1 for hurries is Stone Forsythe, who hasn't played in, 4 weeks now currently. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is DeMontre Jacobs from New England. Number 3, and who Charles Cross is tied with, is Trevor Penning from the New Orleans Saints. That is not company you want to really tie yourself to when you're supposed to be a franchise left tackle. The other thing you got to look at with Ryan Grubb, and this is something, that I talked to you guys a little earlier. I've done some deep dive on it. You look at Jeremy Bates. And some Seahawk fans may or may not know who Jeremy Bates is. He was Pete Carroll's first offensive coordinator when he came into Seattle back in 2010. And Jeremy Bates had really never called plays prior to showing up in Seattle with Pete Carroll. He had 1 year of experience with Carroll at USC, but other than that, he was a quality control coach, assistant to the, passing game coordinator kind of guy. And he kind of had lived through the Mike Shanahan tree at that point. They brought him in because they wanted the Mike Shanahan offense. They were a passing team that year until Marshawn showed up, and they started to try and run the ball, but it didn't jive with Pete Carroll's defense and how he wanted to play football. The philosophies just didn't match. They moved on. Jeremy Bates never really reestablished himself. He had 1 more gig in 2018, I think, at the New York Jets. But you look at Ryan Grubb. When Ryan Grubb was even with Kalen DeBoer, it wasn't really Ryan Grubb calling the plays, and he had full autonomy over that offense. A lot of it was, hey, Kalen, this is what I'm thinking, and Kalen would okay it or not okay it if they were going to do something. That's where and I'm a big UW fan, and I love what Ryan Grubb did in college, but personnel packages, the hashes being different, he's great at devising deep concepts when you have time to throw the ball down the field. There's times for Geno in games where it's we're all saying, Geno, get rid of the ball, get rid of the ball. There's nobody open. There's no check down for Geno to go to. And the fact we haven't been able to establish a run game is baffling. I know our O-line's bad. I get that. But there's things you can do as a coach to create abilities for them to move the ball effectively in the run game. And one thing Mike McDonald said today on his 710 show was, well, when it's not short yardage, we're starting to see positives in our run game. But when it's short yardage, we can't do anything right, essentially.
That's
that's not a glowing endorsement.
It really isn't. And you know what? The other part of Grubb's offense that really is bugging me, and I was talking to Griff, see Mike Spin Move about this. Their play action, and I'll probably do a Field Goals article about this. It's one thing to not use play action a lot, which they still don't. When they do use it, it is bad. They're 30th, I believe, in EPA in terms of play action success per dropback. Geno did not magically get worse. He was a really good play action passer last year, and he was great in 2022. And to me, they can't have a busted play action game because now everything is predictable. I just saw, I went through a good chunk of the All-22 of yesterday's game. And after, I think it was the Devontae Adams drop on 4th down, there was a play on a 1st and 10 where it's a play action under center. Again, 1st and 10, 3 guys are running routes 20 yards down the field. And that's the play where Geno was scrambling, running around, doing his Russell Wilson, Frank Tarkenton impression. And then he tries to do like a sidearm throw to Charbonnet, short hops it. I think Farrell Brown was open too, but, plays done. It would have been cool to see that work out, but nevertheless, again, well, I mean, 1st and 10, and they've got everybody of consequence deep down the field. That's one thing if it's a shot play, like straight off turnover or something, and you have the matchups that you want. But the thing I see with Grubb is that every play action with him is seemingly designed to be a deep shot.
Yep.
Right.
It doesn't have to be. It also doesn't have to be primarily under center play action. Shotgun play action or pistol play action is totally fine. And at that point, Geno also doesn't have to turn his back to the defense. He doesn't seem to have a good play action game. And that is baffling to me because play action is the great cheat code, so to speak, of an NFL offense. That should be a staple of an offense. And I just look, I got my eye on the Cleveland Browns-Denver Broncos game, which is way more exciting than it has any right to be. The Browns are starting Jameis Winston at quarterback. We know how many offensive linemen they've been missing this entire year, such that traded for Nick Harris because one of their centers got hurt, and then he broke his leg or something, and he's out. And you got Jermaine Ifedi is their starting left tackle right now because they're down to like their 3rd string left tackle. They've got 32 points and 503 yards of offense against an elite Broncos defense on the road. Now, are we to assume that the Cleveland Browns have got talent level that is of players on the field right now of the same caliber or superior to the Seahawks? Are we to assume Jameis and Geno are basically the same? Are we to assume Jerome Ford is as much of a superstar running back in the making as Kenneth Walker? Jerry Jeudy, I think, has got like a 200-yard game. And Jeudy has had his issues ups and downs throughout his NFL career. Could you imagine that Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, and whoever their 3rd receiver is, because they're dealing with injuries all over the place, that's on par with Seattle? No. Clearly, they can scheme open receivers. They can scheme up a running game. The Broncos' run defense is getting shredded by Ford for the most part. So Kevin Stefanski, he's a good offensive mind. Ken Dorsey's calling the plays. Like, I feel like if when Seattle replaces Grubb, I would prefer, one, that they have prior NFL play calling experience, and 2, for as long as Geno's the quarterback, or even if they move on from Geno and find somebody else, find somebody who can do the basics well. I don't need to see the wheel reinvented because it feels like Grubb has just stripped out a lot of what worked over the years with Geno and tried to implement his own stuff heavily based on what he had success with in college. And there's a total disconnect. And it is just killing this team. It's odd. They don't go 3 and out very often. They're near the bottom of the league in 3 and out rates. But they're so bad in goal-to-go situations. They take so many negative plays that their 3rd down average yards to go is usually 3rd and forever. And you just can't operate that way. And that we're seeing this against even bad defenses. This Jets defense is not very good this year compared to the previous seasons. And we still saw a lot of the same issues. So they're going to be playing a much better Arizona defense lately. They stymied Seattle's offense in the first meeting. Minnesota's defense, top 5. Green Bay's defense, somewhere in top 10. They're going to have to buck up their ideas soon. And we've been saying that for weeks. I don't see how it's going to get better.
No.
Like, I just don't see it.
No. I mean, go ahead, Bryce.
Well, I don't think his philosophy works. He would have made more sense because he does, and I'll say this about Ryan Grubb. He does design good, deep concepts. When there's time, he can get people open, but he would have been much better coming into the NFL as a passing game coordinator and then working his way to being an OC, because I don't know, like, there's such a disconnect. The fact that when Geno, and if I go and pull up Geno's stats here, so just bear with me. If you pull up Geno Smith's stats from his, couple seasons under Shane Waldron and how abysmal it's gotten for Geno, and that's not because, like you said, Geno's not a bad quarterback. Like, he's just not. But if I go and pull up Geno from 2022, which would have been his first season starting, he threw 30 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. He threw for 4,200 yards. He had 60 or 652 design dropbacks. Like, it was, he was a 79 overall grade on PFF. So take that with what you will. If I go to 2023, even 20-9 for his touchdowns to interceptions in that year. And he missed last year. He missed what, two games with his injury?
Yeah, 2 games. Had to play the Giants game too. So yeah. So he missed a couple games. So it's safe to say Geno may have put up 25 touchdowns and maybe 11 interceptions roughly. Then we come to this year, he's 13-12.
and he's got 496 dropbacks already at week 13, and we still have 5 games left in the season. He's probably going to push 650, I would assume, for dropbacks this year, based on how this offense is currently designed. Like, he's 1,000 yards short of his career high. Like, he could get 1,000 yards the way he's throwing. If he throws for 200, 300, he could get back to that or roughly to it, which is, or, break it even. And it's just not a sustainable way of playing football. And I don't know. I'm going to do, a bit more of a Ryan Grubb philosophy show, I think, coming up here. But I don't see a way for him to survive this. And I don't know if he wants to either. I think he may know he's better off going back to college, which suits his game and his skill, his play calling better. And same for Huff. None of our offensive linemen that were here already have gotten any better. Like Olu, as we saw, had his kind of game, but it wasn't really against a great 49ers front. And, that was kind of it. He hasn't been stellar, per se. So I think there's a good chance you need to kind of go back and look, at what this is. I don't know if they fire Grubb in the season because I don't think they have an answer on the staff right now. I think they're going to wait till after the season to let him go. And it may just be a situation. But here's the thing I'll say is you look at the teams with the top offenses right now in the NFL, there's one thing they all have in common. The Buffalo Bills have taken weight off of Josh Allen by running the football and play action massively. Like Joe Brady has gone in there and been like, okay, cool. Ken Dorsey did all this other stuff. Josh, we're going to make you into more of a traditional quarterback to an extent. And then when you have to do Josh Allen things, we're not asking you to do it all the time. And you look at the snow game. They ran the ball well. They threw short passes. Josh did fine. You look at Ben Johnson in Detroit. Same thing. Like there was one play where in the Thanksgiving Day game they do, and again, it's in the red zone. They fake a pitch toss to Gibbs. Goff turns around and fires a seam ball right to Sam Laporta. And by the time it left Goff's hands, he was already celebrating because he knew it was a touchdown. Like they clearly worked on that all week and knew that they were going to get this look. And that's how that play was put in there and designed. We don't do anything like that. You look at Arthur Smith, even as much as fantasy football people hated Arthur Smith when he was down in Atlanta, he is a phenomenal offensive coordinator. He has brought Russell back to some sort of relevance in Pittsburgh. George Pickens is alive and can, be a suitable receiver for them. But you look at that O-line and run game. Najee Harris is destroying teams and Giles Warren as well. Like the run game is so pivotal right now in the NFL because NFL defenses have gone to speed that now NFL offensive coordinators have adjusted and they're going back to what used to work to kill speed. Let's be stronger and more physical than they are. But we're up here going, yeah, cool. We're going to just throw the ball all over the yard and be one-dimensional and hope you screw up on one of your play calls when we call a run and it works for us. Go team. Like, it's just I don't see any way Ryan Grubb survives. I don't think Scott Huff survives. I think they reboot it, and it doesn't worry me to reboot it. It really doesn't.
No, not at this point. I mean, I got to ask you something too, Mookie. What I mentioned you chimed in on the post game show about getting tackled at the ankles with our backs, Charbonnet and Ken. And we reminisced on a guy, Chris Carson.
Yeah.
And I like Ken Walker. Don't get me wrong, but Chris Carson ran with a poor line. Is it a case maybe just the running styles? Like, it's easy because everyone points to the offensive line. Oh, it's the offensive line for this. And yes, there's obviously blame to be put on, but it's also easy, low-hanging fruit every single time. Like you just go to the offensive line. I'm just throwing this out there for you. Is it possibly also a running style that just doesn't fit right now with a guy like Ken? Sometimes he reverts back to, the pinball style and bouncing off. And when you had a guy like Chris, it was reminiscent, like I told Bryce. He was the first guy that you really got excited about after beast mode, post beast mode, where, man, what a runner. Like I like Ken Walker, but I loved Chris Carson, if that's fair to say. Like, I like Ken, but I loved Chris. I loved his style of running. Is there an argument there?
they're different running backs, as you've stated, in the sense that Walker, when he has space, he can hit home runs that Chris never could.
Yeah.
What Chris was great at was getting you base hits and doubles very consistently. And I think it took him 4 years for him to get a touchdown that was longer than 20 yards. And nobody really cared because we knew that if they needed a yard, Chris Carson – remember the 4th and goal in 2018 against the Niners? It's a game they lost. But Carson is tackled in the backfield for a surefire loss of 2 yards. And he manages to bounce off those guys and just bully his way into the end zone against all the odds. I mean, that was Chris Carson personified. Yeah. He wasn't Marshawn Lynch because Marshawn had a little bit more burst to him and so many things that made him so great. But Carson was also patient. And while this run blocking unit is just bad, and it's not just the offensive line, by the way, there was that one play where Noah Fant didn't even come remotely close to getting his assignment down.
Fair.
And also the receivers have struggled blocking too. Walker can get impatient sometimes. There have been moments throughout his Seahawks career where wherever the play is designed to go is where he ends up not going, and he freestyles it. And he could do that a lot in college because in college he was also the best athlete on the field 9 times out of 10. In the NFL, that's not going to be the case. So I like Kenneth Walker. I think with average run blocking, he would be a much more effective running back than he is right now. But as I said yesterday, Seattle needs a running back who can just fall forward consistently and be able to fight for extra yards in a way that really Charbonnet and Walker don't do a great job of. I saw, to me, potential big running plays in some of the more successful rushes that were pretty much snuffed out because they were getting grabbed by the ankles and immediately taken out, whereas Carson would probably bounce off of them and get 20 to 25. So it's not to criticize them as bad running backs. They're just different. No. Now, in Charbonnet's case, he needs any sort of space because he can't make extra yards for himself. He just can't. And again, the horse collar bailed him out, but 4th and 1, and he ends up being the call. But hey, he redeemed himself in the sense that it seems like the only time this run game works is when they do the pony personnel and Charbonnet is kind of like the default fullback, and it's like the shortest point to give him the ball, and it ended up being the winning touchdown, which was one of the great surprises of a game filled with them. But yeah, see, I was probably going to have to think long and hard about this running back situation next year, and can they gear their blocking schemes and their running style and how they want to run the ball to their running backs, or do they look for a different type of running back to complement Walker? Because I think Charbonnet is far from a lock to be on this roster next year, the way he's played. But yes, there are, to me, the talent does not match what Grubb and the Seahawks coaching staff want to run. And just to get back to the passing game briefly, how many times did we see the Jets rush 4? Geno have a lot of time. And as Bryce had pointed out, everybody's covered. Everybody is covered.
Yeah, no check downs.
And they don't even get open on the scramble drill either. So, and we're seeing that several times this year. And that to me is a little bit more concerning because I'm pretty sure that those guys are capable of getting open. I'm sure JSN and DK and even a faded version of Tyler Lockett can get open against their guys, but we're just not seeing that. Of course, Jameis Winston just threw what's going to be his second pick 6 of the game, and Denver's going to win. Never change, Jameis. But yes.
Man. Here's my thing. So, like, one thing you said there, Tyler Lockett is toast. I love Tyler. I love him. And what he's done for the Seattle team and the community and everything, Tyler will go down in the Wall of Fame.
Yes.
But he is not at all worth what we're paying him and does not provide at all what Tyler Lockett used to provide. I was okay when Tyler Lockett would catch and do the Tyler Lockett thing and fall down and not get any yak. But Tyler Lockett doesn't even give me that anymore. And it's, it's kind of sad because Tyler, even last year, he had the Arizona game catches at the end of the year and he had his moments still and he was still so effective. And it's like, I get JSN's taking that role, but it's like Tyler went from, okay, I'm just going to kind of fade out a little bit to like, I'm completely gone. Like, I don't notice Tyler Lockett out there anymore. like at all.
Well, you didn't
Like
notice him yesterday, that's for sure.
no, and like his last big game was against, I think it was the Rams. We had a touchdown and a couple catches and about 63 yards between, but other than that, it's like 2 catches for 19 yards. Like that's not what I'm used to from Tyler Lockett, and it's like he's just father time has caught up to Tyler. Now I'd love to see him down the stretch here have some Tyler Lockett moments again in a couple of games here, and they may need him to, but I don't see him being on the roster next year. So you're going to be fishing for another receiver. But the thing that's also so bad about this offense, and this is the last thing I'll say on this, I can sit there and go, okay, we're running the ball, we're throwing the ball, we're running the ball, we're throwing. Like I literally can tell by how we're lining up what personnel is on the field, what we're doing. If Jake Bobo's on the field, it's one of two things. We're either going to play action it or we're going to run it. Jake Bobo's never out on the field in spread, we're airing it out situations. And it's baffling to me because if I'm sitting here on my couch, and yes, I'm a coach of football and all that, I know people that aren't coaches of football that can sit there and tell me that, oh yeah, I know Seattle's like running the ball here because of what they're lined up in, or they're going to throw it. Like they know it. Fans should not be able to figure out immediately in their first year with under, a full season, what you're going to do most times when you're a coach of an NFL team. Then if the NFL coaches are going to freaking know, and like you said, Mookie, we talk about Geno, drops back, there's nobody open because the defense knows, hey, we're throwing, they're going to throw deep, so let's just cover 4 and sit back and wait for it. Like, it'll come to us. They don't have anything built in to be a check down that we have to really worry about. So, yeah, but let's get to some of the questions here, guys. They've kind of been pouring in, and anybody that's watching on Twitter, on my feed on Twitter, put your comments in the chat that's there, guys. They will populate here for us, and we will bring them up on the screen. Anyone watching on YouTube, same for you guys as well. So let's get to the first one here from Amy, who's always in our chat. Amy, thank you again for your constant support. Would love to hear you guys talk about why you think they stopped running the quick game. Geno had the ball out fast and early in the beginning of the season. Mookie, I'll let you field this one.
So probably the first, I don't think about the Broncos game a whole lot, but the second and third game, like the Patriots game, the ball got out pretty quickly. I also feel like Geno was at his best toward the end of last season after he came back from his injury, or actually even before the injury, because it was like the Dallas game and then he got hurt. Somebody tripped him in practice and then Locke had to start the next 2 games. But when he got the ball out quicker, he was playing his best football. But his time to throw yesterday was 3.33 seconds. That is, to me, not good, because that tells me it's less about the offensive line having a great day in pass pro and more of, holy shit, these guys are not getting open. The quick game, I don't understand why it's gone away. It seems like Grubb's version of quick game is, we're going to run that middle screen, damn it, until the day I die. I mean, and yesterday it didn't even work because Geno threw a bad ball behind Kenneth and he dropped it. Charbonnet managed to get 8 yards out of the same play. And then there was one play to JSN that gained 1 yard. So I have a feeling that's going to get shut down pretty soon because there's enough tape on it where you can tell exactly when the Seahawks are going to run it. But we don't see slants in the middle of the field very often. We don't see just short curl routes, short out routes, if anything to just keep the sticks or just to stay on schedule, not necessarily keep the sticks moving, but just stay on schedule instead of looking for these 15 to 20 yard plays. I don't like the way that they use the running backs in the passing game. I feel like they could be used in wheel routes. Walker can run routes. It's just, again, your guess is as good as mine, Amy, as to why the quick game has generally gone away. Because Geno was quite good at the quick game stuff, and they have the receivers to do that. I don't understand why we can't have Smith and Jigba as a quick game option that isn't a screen pass, by the way. Just to again, get easy yards here and there. And easy yards here and there in quick game can replace these negative running plays that we're seeing.
Yeah. Hey, Mookie, I don't want to, guys, I don't want to sound too negative here. We are 7-5, but I do got to ask this. I mean, sticking on the offense, because it is a concern. Do you cringe when it's whatever and 1, like 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1? And I'm being serious because I would rather it be 3rd and 3 or 4th and 4. I just feel like Grubb gets okay, now I only have X amount of plays in the playbook because it's 4th and 1, and I roll out the exact same thing. Like the amount of times where and the Bryce and I joke about being allergic to the QB sneak. Like he's a big dude. Why not? I get you don't get the push, but you're then turning around and handing it to Sharps. And it never works. So whenever I see and it feels like it doesn't feel like we're in that, down in distance a lot. Do you guys like, I mean, or is it just something that's been under a microscope? Because every time we're in that, it feels like 90% of the time we're just not converting. I mean, what's your feeling on the down in the distance, and just feeling like every single time we don't get it done, and when we do, we're like, hey, cool, that was a good design. Like when I think it was sort of a delay handoff. I can't remember the exact design to Charbonnet, and he did get that, and I think he ran for a few, but it seems like it's few and far between.
Yeah, I short yardage, it just remains. I tell you what, ever since Steve Hutchinson left, short yardage has terrified me.
Yeah.
We have lost multiple playoff games, including the Bears game in 2006, because like Hasselbeck trips and Sean Alexander gets tackled miles behind the marker. They get a first down. They might even kick a field goal, and they might, against all odds, been in the NFC Championship game. It's just been an adventure for the Seahawks so often. It was even an adventure at times when Lynch was here. Yeah. I mean, remember the NFC Championship game, and they have a chance to get essentially a game-clinching touchdown. This is after Bowman had the unfortunate ACL tear. And what happens? Marshawn Lynch straight fumbles the ball. He wasn't going to score anyway.
Right.
And not for a fortunate stumble, they avoided a 99-yard fumble return touchdown. A yard for this team, it really is the longest yard. And they overcomplicate it to the nth degree, whether it's just bad running plays or ineffective passing plays, but the run stuffs worry me more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they've gone play action on 4th or 3rd and one time this year, which
Doesn't feel like it,
because I don't need to see like a straight drop back game like that horrific 4th and goal stop. Play action, roll out. Geno is not a statue. He can roll out, bootleg, have multiple options there. You can layers concept. You can have a primary read underneath, fake it to the back. You got a tight end leaking out. There's so many ways that they can make life easier for themselves, and they just don't do it. And it's we got one more pick. Our old buddy, I think Cody Barton might get a pick 6 himself. This is unbelievable.
Oh, pal.
He got tackled, but and would you believe it? That was a pick by Jameis at the 1-yard line on a rollout play. So it's written in the stars.
Yeah.
It's like Cody knew.
All right. Here's another one, guys. Ian Victor. Ian's always in our chat. Appreciate you, Ian. Do we have another left guard that we can take a long look at? Laken Tomlinson at this point is just abysmal. Ian, I totally agree, but the guy that I thought they would take a long look at left guard is now currently the starting right guard. So unless you're going to throw Christian Haynes on the left side, I think you're stuck with Lincoln Tomlinson at this point till the end of the season.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? So if Haynes can't get a go, he is nominally right guard 3. He's RG3 of a different sort because he's behind Bradford and then he's behind LeMay all of a sudden. And I know McDonald said it's not like Christian did anything wrong. LeMay just had outstanding. Yeah, he had such an outstanding week of practice that after 11 straight healthy scratches, he is suddenly good enough to make his first NFL start opposite Quinn Williams and a good Jets defensive line. That's great.
Yeah.
Great lying season. I love coach speak. They really just exactly Tomlinson the rest of this season, and then move LeMay to left guard next year, I think, and see about Haynes at right guard. Or maybe they want to move Haynes to left guard. Like have one of those two be a left guard option next year. Or if they want to make a splash move in the offseason, of course, we got to see who gets cut, who are cap casualties, who are going to be free agents, who could be on the trade market. That's the opportunity to make a actual good splash signing for a young guy or promising guy in his prime to solidify the offensive line.
Here's one from 3D Tables. Bears looking better without Waldron and having a bad O-line doesn't bode well for Grubb. Very true. Like the Bears kind of now without Waldron there, and they don't have a great O-line. they're functioning at a little bit better of a rate with their new interim OC, who's now their interim head coach because Eberflus is fired. But again, that doesn't bode well for Grubb, really. Like, it just doesn't.
No.
Like, so it's
And
another.
the Bears were quick to move on from what, 7 games in, 8 games in. I mean,
they probably regret even picking up the phone and calling.
Well, we said
Shane
that
Waldron.
we said that in the offseason, right? We're like, it's almost like the Pacific Northwest is that gift and curse, like, because people really don't pay attention. So they just like, oh, Shane, yeah, you look at the stat sheet, it's not too bad, but we were happy. Finally, he was out the door. Credit to the Bears
when PFF ranked him, and this is where again you take
that was the other thing.
Yeah, where PFF ranked him as the 6th best offensive coordinator in the NFL.
Was that after the Bears hired him? Was that after the Bears hired him or before?
That was just the week of. I think they just hired him. It came out like the day of him getting hired or the day after. And I was just sitting there going, PFF, if you wanted to make yourself look that much more like a donkey, you just did by putting out that saying Shane Waldron is the 6th best overall offensive coordinator in the NFL. So kudos to you guys at PFF. Here we go. Steph, Grubb ran his head into the wall 3 times in a row. Wasn't it on the inside zone with Barner in motion to the left? Had me scratching my head. Yeah, like, again, this is the motion thing I'm talking about. His motion doesn't affect the defense enough like it does in college because you can't stretch it and pull guys out of the box as much as he'd like to because of the way the hashes are set up. And that was a staple of Washington's success last year, was their ability to really pull a team out laterally because of how they'd stretch out their trips looks and their, tight ends in motion and stuff. And it's just not there in the NFL for them. So, yeah, no, that was definitely a head scratcher. What else do we got in here? I think we answered this one, or I answered this one earlier, but yeah, Kalen DeBoer has kind of been the play caller. He's even the same thing down in Alabama, as far as I know, as he is the one that calls the plays. So here's one that's kind of depressing.
Oh, no.
The offense hasn't broken 20 since Atlanta. The offense on its own, realistically.
Yeah. They scored 20 in the Jets game because the pick 6 that Williams had, they missed the extra. Well, they had the PAT blocks. So that's 20 on the offense. They had 10 in the Cardinals game. It's weird. They score more on the road on offense than they do it. So guess what, everybody? That Arizona game is going to be great.
We're going to blow them out, but the problem is we're playing at our cursed stadium.
Well, at least it's not the last game of the year, though. Because that feels
fair.
like that's even more of a curse when we go down there. It feels like why are we playing them always the last game of the year? This year's the Rams.
That's just a cursed team, not a cursed stadium. But yes, what did they put up? 20 against the Rams in the home loss, and it should have been 21 if not for the missed extra point. But nevertheless, that's the last time I think they scored 3 touchdowns in a game on offense. So yeah, they haven't broken 30 yet, just with their offense this season, which is disappointing. And I think their best game is the loss to Detroit, and that was a game that offensively, where they put up 500 some odd yards. And that, again, we got on Grubb in that game because it took him forever to run the ball. And he did run it in the second half. That was Walker ran wild against him. And I think that is one of the few times they had like a net positive game on the ground. They've only had 2 games all year with the running backs, just the running backs combined for 100 rush yards. The Broncos game where K9 had 100 by himself, and the Dolphins game where Charbonnet had close to 100 and Kenny Mack had 11. That's it the entire year. That is appalling.
I want to say this. Let's take this one, and then I just want to, because we'll hang out for a little while longer, and I just want to spin it and kind of look ahead to the next few games and kind of talk about a few positive things. But Bryce, when we get into this one?
Well, this one, Ian. This is Ian brings up a good point. He's like, I won't be shocked if Grubb is fired before the playoffs. It seems that when Mike had asked why did they throw the ball at the goal line, he was seething inside. Anything's possible. There was a point, I don't know if you saw it, Mookie, Aaron Levine put up a clip from the game. I'm not a pro mouth lip reader, but it kind of looked like, Mike said either why did we throw it, or what was the thought of throwing? Like, kind of just like, why are we doing that? And then even in his post game when he was asked about it, Mike's pretty good at hiding his emotions, but he has certain facial expressions that kind of pop up, I've noticed. And you can see that he is kind of super frustrated that this offense does not complement how his defense plays. They just don't. They don't mesh. They're too different. And even when you listen to, and I strongly encourage like our listeners, our viewers, watch the press conferences during the week of like when Mike McDonald's asked a question. And Brian Nimhauser of Hawk Blogger, one thing I appreciate about Brian so much this year is he's asked a lot of really good questions and put them on the spot to see how McDonald will answer things and how Grubb answers things. And they both seem to come back with different responses on the similar questions. And it's kind of like you guys shouldn't have that different of a response. They should be kind of similar. And it's kind of interesting that they're that different.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this too. The one thing I'll spin it, and you look at it, we are in first place. And a big reason is because of this defense. And to me, when you look at how poorly this offense is, there's just no flow. I'm more confident than ever in the last, I don't know how many seasons, that we can compete against anybody. And because this defense just seems for real. And you were careful to say, hey, this isn't Legion of Boom 2.0. But the energy levels, we had Dan Vians on the show a couple weeks ago. He was at the game. He goes, listen, the energy in this stadium against Arizona, I don't remember it being like that since the Legion of Boom days. And that tells you something right there. And then when you think back to Legion of Boom and you think about some of those stagnant games we had on offense, we didn't care about it really. It was like, Russ, just don't turn the ball over right now. Just, whatever. If you're gonna run the ball and we punt, get the defense coming back. You're gonna get the ball back in a few minutes. That's the feeling I have right now. Where you talk about the Arizona Cardinals who were coming in hot, who we just shut them down, shut Kyler down right away, shut down the running game. Yeah, the Jets aren't as good, but the turnovers now that we're seeing piling up. Kobe Bryant, I mean, big cat. We don't even have to talk about him, right? And so then you're thinking, what's in store for next week? It gets you excited. You talk about the rematch against Arizona. I don't expect much from this offense. I really don't expect much from the offense the rest of the year. And I think for me, it's almost a moot point where, in the offseason, if Grubb's gone, he's gone, and then we move on. I don't see how anything really changes offensively. Maybe a couple things get better. Maybe, Geno and DK connect for a couple of big plays and we put up some extra points. But my focus right now, how this defense is just rolling. And if we go into Zona with this defense, the way they played the last month, I mean, how are you not confident that again, like, and especially if you're Arizona, like, man, they shut us down completely. Like, where's your confidence level if you're the Arizona Cardinals? You got this team coming right back in your house. That's what I'm looking at, Mookie. I mean, what is your take when you look at this and you look at the remaining 5 games? And I know we got some tough games. And look, if you have a special teams performance like that, yeah, I mean, no business even being in the games. But if that's cleaned up respectably or whatever, and the offense is still what it is, the way this defense is balling, what's your confidence level the rest of the way?
I think because of the favorable results, and they've gotten a lot of favorable results, it would have been a bonus if the Saints had upset the Rams, but Derek Carr was not interested in leading a comeback drive at the end there. If the Rams had lost, they'd have been 5-7, and we'd be looking at them knocking on death's door because they play Buffalo this weekend. So I think Seattle could get away with winning this division at 9-8, which is to say winning just the Arizona and the Rams games, because they would have swept Arizona. All they would need to be is one game better than them, or 8-5, 6-7. So essentially, they just don't need to be 3 games worse than Arizona the rest of the way if that happens. And then on the Rams side, if the Rams lose to the Bills, as I would expect them to lose, and Seattle beats Arizona, you've got Seattle 8-5, but they don't have a tiebreaker on the Rams. If they just win, if the Rams lose even one more game from now until the season finale, and Seattle's on 8 wins or on 9 wins, they're on the cusp of winning the division just on that alone. So I'm more optimistic than not that they can see this out. But a loss would be hugely damaging, as I had tweeted earlier, because dropping the Rams game and the first 49ers game, you drop this Arizona game, you're going to be 1-3 in the division, or 2-3 in the division. Sorry, Arizona would have a third division win, and they haven't played San Francisco a second time. They haven't played the Rams a second time. If they win even one of those last two, they're going to have a tiebreaker on Seattle in the division record. So if they lose, then they're really up against it to win one of those NFC North matchups, Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago. And while that Chicago game looks like the most winnable, it's also the one that's on a short week. You're making it from Seattle to Chicago during Christmas. And as I understand it, it gets pretty cold in Chicago in late December. So that could be one of those bad weather games where you might have to rely on your run game to see it through. And while Darrell Taylor will try his best to make sure Seattle has a great running game, I don't think that's going to work out. So, yeah, I'm optimistic because of the defense. If they can just ugly it up and win multiple games, 16-13, I'll take it. I won't enjoy it, but I'll take it. But
in a sense, it's kind of what they've been doing when you look at it the last few weeks. I mean, it hasn't been the most prettiest, but it's been that defense just putting their foot down and saying, "Hey," and that's what I'll be excited about when the season's said and done. Like if we make the playoffs, like we talked about off season, like how's this team trending? And I'd rather be like, okay, we have to work on the offense big time in the off season compared to we have to overhaul this defense. You know what I mean? Like, would you agree with that? Where it's like we have a foundation that we can build. This defense looks like it could be the real deal. And I mean, do you agree with that? Where that's a little harder to fix, like that. The way that the running backs were run down our throat the last 4 or 5 years was deflating. You know, to me, when the offensive struggle is not as deflating, it's like frustrating, and it's like, come on, we got to be better than this. But it's not as deflating, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because last year we had our frustrations with the offense and the red zone struggles and the third down struggles. We've had those issues more often than not the last several years. But I think last year they were 11th in points per drive, and I believe every team above them made the playoffs. The offense had some serious problems in situational football, but in terms of points per drive, they were good enough to make the playoffs. The defense absolutely sunk the season. Like that Pittsburgh game was one of the grossest showings ever for a Pete Carroll team, because it was Mason Rudolph and they made him look like prime Roethlisberger. So that to me is more of a downer, because it makes you wonder, does Seattle need to have a top 3 offense because their defense is so bad they got to win shootouts every week? Now it's a different story, where if the offense could please just touch 20 points and the special teams doesn't screw anything up, I like their chances more off, at least 60% to win most games. So I guess we'll really have our great handle on this defense with the Green Bay or Minnesota game, because we've already seen them shut Arizona down before. If they have a tougher time in the rematch, so be it, because there are going to be adjustments made by both teams. But if they shut down Green Bay, if they look good against Green Bay, hold them below their average or whatever, same with Minnesota, which Bryce, you'll be at that game, I think a lot of people are going to be sold that, yes, McDonald is the guy to at least transform this defense. And then now you got to fix the offense. Keeping in mind, defense doesn't tend to be stable year to year. You still have the pieces in place to have a defense that'll keep you in games. Kind of like the 2011 season, right? Where the Legion of Boom had its origin story there. They weren't great the first half of the year, but then they tore it up the second half of the year, and Seattle went from 2-6 into the playoff hunt. They only narrowly missed out on a wild card spot because the defense was so dominant. And the thought process was, fix this offense, get a different quarterback, not necessarily the same with Geno, but with Tavares Jackson, he pretty much had to upgrade over him and Whitehurst. Make a few changes here and there on offense, and you're cooking with gas. So sort of the same elements I feel right now with this team, that this is kind of 2011-ish, that the defensive turnaround over the last few weeks is something that can carry over into next season, and that we just need the offense to take that next step some way, somehow.
So I'm going to throw up a couple here, guys. This is from the field goals kind of posts on Twitter from Mookie side of things. So I'm going to throw this up here. Just give me 1 second here. We got a couple of them. Let's find them here. Here we go. All right. So we've got this one coming in from Awkward Kong. How many of the coordinators are coming back next season? In general, do you think they change the staff a lot?
I think, as we've discussed, Grubb and Huff are probably gone unless something miraculous happens. So those are two right there. Harbaugh, I think, is going to be on some level of thin ice if the special teams does not improve after cutting Geno and possibly Williams. So it's really just those. We don't talk about Dirty a lot because we know McDonald is the one running the defense and he's the defensive play caller. But the defensive line playing as well as it has, and the fact that Dirty is defensive line coach from his days in Dallas, I think is a credit to him at some point. He's not carrying Mike McDonald's water. He's got to have some job and some role in having this defense improve. But otherwise, I don't think they're going to be huge wholesale changes. So obviously Dirty stays. Special teams coordinator Harbaugh, that's going to be a little bit dicey with the way that the season is going. Offensive coordinator, I'm fairly convinced now that, again, unless we see a December to remember in a positive way from Ryan Grubb's offense, that we're going to be looking for another offensive coordinator.
Wouldn't that be a crazy turnaround? Just like we talk about flipping a switch. Real quick, I want to get the next one. I'm not going to. But I'm going to be curious to see what offensive changes there will be personnel-wise as well. We talk about Grubb and Huff. Maybe there might be some more. We talk about, hey, this offense is set. Coming to we basically didn't make any changes from last season's offense. Because we're like, well, all we need is a different coordinator in here. Minus obviously some offensive line concerns. But the skill positions were good, right? I'm curious to see if they shake it up more than we think.
All right, so we'll go to the next one here, and this is from Jen Maz. Why do we not have a run game coordinator? We may have one, they just haven't given the title to, but I haven't seen one. I'm assuming Huff kind of has that role in a way, maybe within tandem, the running back coach. But it's a good question because it's one of the few times I've seen Seattle not have a run game coordinator.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't Andy Dickerson the run game coordinator here in addition to his role as the offensive line coach?
Yes, he was. And I believe before that, it was Mike Solari was also run game coordinator when he was here with Schottenheimer. And then you had Tom Cable with Daryl Bevel. They kind of split the OC duties actually in the total, which is kind of crazy. And I don't know if a lot of Seahawks fans know that, but Daryl Bevel only called the pass plays and Tom Cable only called the run plays for Seattle for that time of period they were together.
Yes. So, run game coordinator, because at the moment it looks very uncoordinated. And I just got this tweet about an hour ago from Al Karsten. Kenneth Walker, the last 3 games, 48 carries for 144 yards. That's 3 a pop. Yep. He has 152 rushing yards after contact. So if you're good at math, if you know your arithmetic, 144 rushing yards, 152 yards after contact. There was already that stat in the Fox broadcast that he's the second most contacted running back behind the line of scrimmage. That's ugly. And as I jokingly said yesterday, it's a shock that he's not first.
Yeah, that is actually a very, very good point. All right. So our last one from the mailbag there from Mookie's field goals is, why is MM quick to make changes to the defense, i.e. the linebackers, but D. Williams is still on the roster? Why don't they sign a returner? Is it that hard to get a guy like Godwin in? Oh, I can't even try and pronounce that last name. Also, do you think that we should be worried about Haynes? So let's break this into 3 different parts. So Ryan, you take the D. Williams part, and Mookie, you take the Haynes part.
You giving me like the biggest head scratcher because I understood why they had him originally on the roster. He was supposed to be this versatile guy. He could play a little emergency. Maybe he could he can play DB, he can play receiver, and he can return and all this. The hype about him, and he's just done nothing. And then they cut Chenault. So maybe there's something we just don't know about this guy. I don't know, but maybe he's just doing everything right at practice, but even then, I gotta expect this guy to be cut soon, especially with guys that are going to be active. I mean, I don't know. I'm sort of looking at Mookie, man. Like, what do you think? Heading on? I mean, I don't see him finishing off the season.
You can't.
I don't see it. But yeah, that's a good point. Maybe Mike just isn't. He's just so laser focused on the defense that he's like, you know what, whatever. Like, it's special teams. Jay Harbaugh is going to take care of it. And I'm focused on getting this right because, like we think, linebacker is so important to his defensive schemes that he wasn't going to let the season go by with what he had when he knew right away this was not good enough. So I just think maybe it's become a bit of an afterthought. And now that he had a game like that, but then he cut the other guy. So he's got to be doing something that I don't know, man. It's a head scratch for everybody at this point. But I will say this, just not to drag on the answer, that if I had a prediction, I don't think he lasts. But again, it's kind of shitty because I feel like he has to do something else really bad again. If he kind of plays out the next 5 games with mistake free, then he doesn't get cut. So if my prediction's right, that means he probably loses another ball. And then that's just something you don't want to see either. So I don't know, man. I mean, yeah, head scratcher.
All right, Mookie, you got the last part. What's the deal? Should we be worried about Christian Haynes?
Not yet, because remember, Lamea, where we were going to be worried about Lamea being a regular healthy scratch, watching Tomlinson and Bradford have their struggles. But I guess the difference being is that Haynes is a 3rd-round pick. We don't want to see him be the 3rd-string guard behind somebody picked behind him and also somebody who had been struggling in the starting lineup. I didn't think Haynes played badly in that Cardinals game, but there might be something to hit the strength issue where he might be a little too easy to physically overpower in the passing game, because I thought he had some good moments as a run blocker. I wouldn't close the chapter on Christian Haynes just yet. He is a rookie. Maybe he just needs another off season, work on his strength and work on maybe bulking up a bit. And let's keep in mind, might have a new offensive line coach next year. So there could be somebody else who goes, yeah, I think that there's a way to get Christian Haynes involved more in this offense and be a starter in this team. So I'm not going to be worried just yet. A little disappointed that the 2nd pick of Seattle's draft is basically struggling to get on the field, but I'm not panicking in that sense with Haynes.
So we've got 3 more that we're going to put up here, and then we'll call it a wrap for the show because we've gone longer than normal with this one. So Corey, who's regularly in. Corey, thanks for contributing again. He goes, if Grubb adds a run game coordinator, they might keep him. I know Mike likes him personally and Grubb's work ethic. I think that's probably Grubb, the Mike personal and Grubb thing, maybe one aspect, which is I think why Grubb partly got the job when they brought him in for the interview. And I don't doubt that Grubb works hard, but I think the other part of this is what is the football results showing on the field, and they're not showing what Mike McDonald wants. And you can see it in Mike's pressers. He's not the greatest at hiding when he's kind of frustrated about things and he gets short with things, and you can see that started to kind of come out. Divine Comedy brings one in here that's good. Without the Husky lobby group working overtime for his PR, would Ryan Grubb already be a persona non grata among the fans? That's a fair point. A lot of Husky fans or Seahawk fans and vice versa. I think that's a fair statement in some regards that, because of his success with the Huskies, I think there's a lot of Husky fans that want him to succeed in Seattle, which is fair. And I was one of them at the beginning of the year. Yeah, I'm also impartial to a point because the Seahawks are my first love, and I want to see the Seahawks be successful overall. And I just don't see it coming from Ryan Grubb. I don't, sadly.
It's not just like the recent successful Husky teams. I remember the push to want to draft Jake Locker in 2011, but he was just a little bit too high up the draft board for Seattle, or the fan base flipping its lid when Cason Williams got cut. It's like sometimes we see it for Washington State players too, but just having the local product succeed on the Seahawks, there is that bias that creeps in, that you want everything to stay in house. But this is real life, man. It's you can't have it that way.
Yeah. All right, so we've got one more here from Corey. He goes, Haynes' best position would be center, to be honest, with his body type. I know at Senior Bowl, he took quite a few reps at center. So there is the possibility that next year's center competition could be Christian Haynes and Oluwatimi potentially, and maybe Sundell as well. And those are your three centers, and they truly like reboot the guard position altogether again. And that could really be kind of where they end up going. Who knows? It's a very good point from Corey here. Like, he could move to center. His body type probably fits center better.
Yeah, it's. I mean, Damian Lewis had that one game at center, didn't he? In an emergency a few years back. Now he's not a center, and he's playing quite well at left guard over at Carolina, much to my appreciation for him. But it would be better if he was doing it here, and we wouldn't have to deal with Tomlinson right now. But nevertheless, I guess it's possible to see Haynes in a different position just to figure out if he just is a better fit there.
Yeah. Hey guys, we love having all the comments come in, pour in. It's been an awesome interactive show. That's why we love doing this. Pulse of the Hawks with Mookie Alexander, and we love doing it live because we get Mookie's insight with you guys coming in here, and just great conversations. But yeah, man, I mean, you look at it overall, just summing it up. It's been a roller coaster, right? It's been a bigger roller coaster of a season than I expected. You thought there was going to be ups and downs, but to start off 3-0, I know the quarterbacks weren't to par, but then then the all of a sudden the defense looked worse than last year, and then the switch, and then now we won 3 in a row, and we're first. When just a few weeks ago we thought maybe it's time to talk off season a bit and figure it out, but now we're leading the division, and we're in the home stretch here, and it's awesome football. And at the same time, you're seeing guys develop, right? Like the Kobe Bryants, and just kind of seeing this defense evolve at the same time, playing meaningful football. I mean, that's awesome to see. You're not just evaluating guys for next season. You're doing it at the same time with Mike in his first year and making a playoff push. So that it's exciting. It's exciting to watch. And I think we all agree. I think we're all hoping that this offense, maybe it'll just click. Maybe something will click. So we'll see. I have a lot of hope the next 5 games, but I do have hope for this team. I really think the way this defense is, I can see us really being in every single game. And I'm not saying that means we're winning them all, but I have the feeling that this defense is for real right now, and that'll keep us in a lot of football games. So I'm excited. And you talk about the Minnesota game. I'm excited to see this defense, what they can do against a guy like Sam Darnold. Because not an experienced dude where he's used to winning. When he gets in his home stretch, it's a different feeling for him. So, it's going to be exciting to play those teams. I can't wait. It's going to be exciting, man. So, I don't know, guys, any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
Mookie, you first.
Yeah, doesn't it feel great to beat Aaron Rodgers? First time got to do it on the road after all those years. We couldn't beat him at Lambeau. I know he's 41. Happy birthday, Aaron. But, if Leonard Williams gave you a rude awakening, it was just great to shut the door on this Jets nonsense season. I'm glad I stuck to my guns saying they're not making the playoffs. They're way worse than I thought they would be, but nevertheless, enjoy these wins. I'm glad to be talking about playoff football and potential of hosting a playoff game, because remember, the last time they won the division was the COVID year. So 2016 is the last time the Seahawks won the division and hosted a playoff game in front of fans. So amazing. The thought of that happening in a year where we've discussed what's happened to the Lumen Field mystique, I'll tell you what, what'll bring that mystique back, and we saw some of it in the Arizona game, a defense that kicks ass the way that this defense has kicking ass lately. So I can see the last few games. Yeah, there are going to be a lot of Packers fans at this game because the Packers fans travel well, but I can see these Seahawks fans bringing it because now there's something to get excited about. The reason why people kind of tuned out in the middle part of the season is we weren't getting a lot to be all hyped up about on the offense or the defense. Well, now we got something on defense at the very least. So hopefully that continues the rest of the way, and hopefully dad-to-be Mike Macdonald keeps tearing it up because we don't know if he's going to coach this weekend. Actually, Leslie Frazier took questions at press conference because Mike's wife is in labor and they're expecting their first child. So if everything goes well, congratulations to them.
Awesome.
And let's have Mike Macdonald be the daddy of the NFC West rivals.
Well put. Yeah, Bryce, any closing thoughts, Matt?
Honestly, I just want to see the offense get its stuff together and be somewhat average. And I don't think that saves Ryan Grubb's job, but just something complimentary to this team, especially in those games that are the next 3 that are coming up, are going to be huge versus the Cardinals, Packers, Vikings. But yeah, it's fun to talk playoff football. It's fun to talk about that. This whole season's kind of been fun to talk about to this point. With the ups and the peaks and the valleys of it, and it's made it that much more interesting to do the show that we do and have guests on like Mookie and others. So it's been a lot of fun. Congratulations to the McDonald family whenever that news comes through that their child's born. That's great. Can't wait to, hopefully it's someone that has an offensive brain like Mike's, and we can eventually just turn that into a positive for the Seahawks potentially. But yeah, no, that's kind of it for me. Mookie, anything coming up with field goals this week that people should know about?
Yeah, as mentioned earlier, I will do something on the struggles that the Seahawks are dealing with their play action offense, and also might as well just hype up Jackson Smith and Jigba some more, because it felt like we were just dogging the offense all game, but there were some positives. And JSN being that big time threats down the field that he hadn't been in the previous however many games in his rookie season, the first 3 weeks of this season. Now we're starting to see him get some of those plays that Lockett used to get, and we should be excited about that. This dude's got a real shot to get 100 grabs, if not break Lockett's franchise record for receptions in a season. So yeah, be on the lookout for that, and some other more upbeat, positive thoughts entering the dreaded Arizona game. But you know what? That's depending on the weather. That is an indoor stadium, or at least a retractable roof stadium. And for whatever reason, when that roof closes or they're in an indoor environment, the offense seems to play better. So maybe that's going to happen again this week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And quick shout out to DK for a couple deep downfield plays, and should have had a TD, actually, a little underthrown ball. Should have walked in the end zone, but because we didn't mention him. And anyways, yeah, guys, we're positive. We're fired up about this team. We're playoff bound. Let's go. So yeah, Mookie, we appreciate it, man. Guys, every 2 weeks, tune in the bi-weekly show, Pulse of the Hawks with Mookie. We love doing this. So yeah, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.